Welcome back to Buckeye Talk here on the final day of the 2021 NFL Draft. The first Ohio State player off the board goes to the hometown team here in the fourth round. It was the 132nd pick,
correct?
I believe. Tommy Togiai to the Browns, who need some impact in the defensive interior. Doug, let's start there, because you know the Browns better than any of the rest of us. We know the Ohio State side of things, but tell Ohio State fans why the Browns wanted Tommy Togiai.
All right, so I was on the Browns call with a member of their front office and Tommy Togiai when they talked about this pick. So they released Sheldon Richardson this offseason. They got rid of Larry Ogunjobi. Those were the two starting defensive tackles for the Browns last year. They're looking at a three-man defensive tackle rotation this year between Andrew Billings, who they signed from the Bengals before last season, but then Andrew Billings opted out, Jordan Elliott, who was their third-round pick last year and was part of their rotation in defensive tackle last year, and Malik Jackson, who's a veteran. I think they signed to a one-year deal from Philadelphia. Those are the three guys they're looking at. Togiai becomes the fourth guy in that defensive tackle room. I think he's a rotational guy this year. I would bet he probably is fourth among defensive tackles in snaps this year, kind of how Jordan Elliott was for them a year ago. But the Browns are a good enough franchise. They're a deep enough roster right now. They're drafting a year ahead, right? And so you can see there are no stars blocking him at defensive tackle for the Browns. There's some theorizing, could Sheldon Richardson come back? Maybe. I think Tommy Togiai is a rotational little bit of a dude this year. I think he has a chance to be a starter defensive tackle for the Browns in 2022 as they look ahead. And maybe Malik Jackson's not back. And then Andrew Billings, I don't know. But there's no stars there. And I think they view him this way. And I think, Nathan, you wrote about that sort of coming into the draft and people saying, listen, this guy maybe needs a little bit more development, but if you're getting second-round talent in the fourth round, I think that's exactly how the Browns are viewing this.
Well, what I think is really interesting is everything you just described kind of mirrors his Ohio State experience, right? Go back to 2019. He's like fourth or fifth in snaps in the rotation at defensive tackle. Had some good guys ahead of him, but not like all-American guys. You know, Devon Hamilton, Jayshon Cornell. There were some other guy. You know, they had good guys in the middle.
Robert Landers.
Yeah, so they had good guys up there, but not guys who were, you know, Devon Hamilton's in the NFL, and Cornell got picked in the seventh round, but not Blazers. So the opportunity was there. He always had these guys who he always had this talent kind of simmering, and it was just a matter of when the opportunity was going to come, and Ohio State could afford to let him grow into that. And Stephen, that seems to be, you know, this is the blueprint that they probably sell to a lot of guys is come here, stick it out. You're going to get opportunities as a backup guy, as a rotational guy. And then when that opportunity then comes to get out in front, make the most of it. And Tommy Togiai, I think, obviously did that in 2020.
Yeah, it makes sense. He is the first member of the 2018 recruiting class who's been drafted. So now that clock starts for that class. We'll see a lot more of those guys a year from now. But I am wondering, given where he was drafted, as a third-year guy who could have come back and maybe put a little bit more on film and shown a little bit more, if he should have come back for his fourth year, given where if he'd have been a third-round draft pick or a second-round draft pick, then it makes a lot of sense. But for a guy who had another year, even in a normal situation where you're not getting that extra year of eligibility, this is kind of low for a guy who only spent 3 years in college and really only has 1 year of starter film. As you guys just mentioned, he was in the rotation in 2019, but he was the fourth guy. And really, he was the third guy amongst nose tackles because you had Devon Hamilton and BB Landers taking up the majority of those snaps. Last year was his first time just being the guy, and he played every meaningful snap outside of the national championship game because he had COVID. Maybe he could have benefited from another year.
So I asked him about that.
Thanks,
I was
Doug.
waiting for you to stop talking so I could jump in and give the answer to the 91-second question you asked about that. So I thought it was interesting, and I don't know how much he talked about this before, but he did say that he's healthy, and he said, I wanted to get out while I'm healthy. I didn't want to come back and risk an injury, and just the pandemic uncertainty. Just, when he made the decision in December, we didn't know. We don't know what the rest of when he made it in January. We don't know and then again, especially like, you missed the national title game because of COVID. Now, he didn't say that specifically, but that uncertainty, he was like, I'm just going to go. And he said, I didn't know. He wasn't shocked. He didn't say, oh, man, Friday was the worst day ever because I couldn't believe I didn't get drafted, right? He said, I figured I'd go between the second and fourth round. I kind of thought this is where I'd be, and this all seems fine. So, what's a guy going to say? But sometimes guys are honest. Some guys are tweeting like, league's sleeping on me. They'll regret this. Like he wasn't like that. So I think the Browns do see him as developmental. They think he's quick twitch. They think he has good burst off the ball. But there was a lot of discussion on the call that the draft expert guys on TV were saying he's a good pass rusher, but he needs to get better against the run. And both the Browns and Togiai were like, no, he's good against the run. He needs to get better as a pass rusher. Because someone asked, like, hey, the TV guys are saying this, and the Browns were like, yeah, no, that's not what we think. So run stopper, we saw that he can push the pocket a little bit, and it's just a really good fit because they don't need him to be great right now. And so to him, it's like, well, that developmental year, I think he does probably need a developmental year, right? It's just, you're going to take it in college, you can take it in the NFL. So maybe if he did it in college, he could have been a second-round pick next year. He's going to do it in the NFL with the Browns, and then he might be ready to be a starter in the NFL in year 2 when he otherwise would have just been going into the draft.
I can respect
mentioned this
that
before. Yeah, I mentioned this before, but I was on a call with Mel Kiper Jr., and he's just one of many draft analysts, although I think he's a pretty good one. But I asked him specifically about Tommy Togiai several weeks ago, and he said the same thing you're saying, Doug. He didn't try to oversell him. He didn't, he talked about the good things he does, but says this is not like a probably a first or second round pick yet. He's probably still a guy who's going to have to grow into still the player he's going to become. But some team could take him in maybe the 4th round. That was literally the round he said, like, take him in the 4th round, and you might be getting second round value in the long run because of what he could grow into. So now that's what the Browns are hoping they got here in the 2021 NFL draft. Stay tuned. We're going to do these for every Ohio State player that comes off the board today. I'm Nathan Baird for Doug Lesmerises and Stephen Means. That was Buckeye Talk.